It is now my pleasure to turn the webcast over to Harry Stahl, partner of the SunGard Consulting Services. Harry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and welcome to our three-part webinar series, which explores how a holistic approach to your business can transform your operations, increase efficiency, and your competitive edge for the long haul. I'm Harry Stahl. I'm a partner with SunGard Consulting Services and focus on private equity. In today's session, we'll be discussing how you can transform your operating model to keep pace with your business. Joining me today will be Jason Haft, who's a principal in our SunGard Asset Management business, and Jason Melvisser, who's a principal in SunGard Consulting Services, two experts in this topic. In today's session, we want to cover private equity market trends as a whole that are driving these kinds of changes, some challenges that GPs and service providers are facing in the private equity space, our own view of the private equity operating model as a key to how to solve these problems, the benefits of optimizing your operating model, and how you can approach this transformation and what it will look like when you get there. To start us off looking at the private equity market trends, I'll hand it over to Jason Haft.
Thank you, Harry, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We're glad that we can chat in today and looking at some of the market trends within the industry. It certainly is always a good opportunity to talk about some of the challenges that we've identified today, and in times where things are going quite well. And what we've wanted to just cover with initially was just really all the metrics that are demonstrating that fact. Clearly, commitments are up significantly after the crash in 2008, 2009, and this year our expectation is that they will continue to demonstrate an increase in growth. And as we would expect, with the increase in commitments, we're also seeing that LPs are expecting to increase their commitments to the funds that they're investing in, and increasing their exposure to the private equity market. So as we would expect, that aligns well with the increase in commitments that are in the field. And further bringing this all together is that seeing the increase as more commitments are in the field, more interest in the private equity marketplace. One of the reasons is we think that there's going to be a continued return on investment, showing as a byproduct of cheap debt, as well as the IPO market starting to really increase. The value of these deals and the values of the returns that these deals are going to return is starting to really trend up back in the areas that we were seeing previously. So that's the good, and that's the one of the reasons why we're here, as we said, is to talk take an opportunity where we're seeing an increase in market value, and an increase in commitment, an increase in the size of the assets that the managers that we talk to are working with. But there are still challenges as well, and those pressures are going to continue to go on to the GPs. Right? We're seeing that the assets that these firms are managing are starting to increase, but traditionally the staff that is going to support those assets aren't increasing proportionately. And while certainly performance and the economic volatility are things that are always of paramount importance to investors, speaking to the folks on the call today, it's not something that I think we want to focus on the areas that we can really control. And those really are around three areas that we've really identified around regulation, transparency, and fees. Starting with just regulations, you look in the past couple of years, just the alphabet soup of new regulations that are out here, with Form PF, AIFMD, FATCA, just to name a few, are causing increased pressures onto the teams that manage the day-to-day operations, in helping to now bring together all these regulatory filings and make sure that they're done in a timely manner. In addition, on the transparency standpoint, we look at the investors that we see and the clients that we talk to in the marketplace, and more than ever before, it's the limited partners who are becoming much more sophisticated. They're the ones who are interested in software and looking for ways that they can start manage all the pieces of data that they're getting from their managers, and turn that information that they can then start to make their investment decisions by. So looking for that increased transparency, not just from the regulatory standpoint, but from the limited partners, is now, and on top of that, the increase in commitments and assets that these firms are managing are causing the teams to now be overburdened with a lot of the tasks they have. Right. And I think those then tie into the challenges that go into from a fundraising perspective, right? And some of the challenges that, a lot of those challenges that we spoke of in the first couple slides start to carry through here in terms of what are the most important things that people are looking for when looking to select from a GP. So, I mean, you look at one of the big telling signs that we've seen is just around the due diligence process. The amount of increased focus that the investors are putting in the due diligence process, whereas today they're looking to understand the operations, the controls in place, how all of that is going to work. It's becoming a deciding factor in terms of what investors are selecting their managers. Clearly, performance is obviously going to be the most important and paramount topic that you want to make sure that you can cover. But in today's market, where everybody is claiming of top quartile, it's those other places where you differentiate yourselves. How are you managing your expenses, your overall operating costs? Are you able to provide those transparency and those concerns to your investors? Those are going to be some of the key things that we see as an importance in the coming years. So we talked about how the pressures are mounting on the general partners. So what does that mean? And just to summarize, again, there's an increase in the regulatory and compliance. The demands on the general partners are there as they've never been before. The technology that has been put in place hasn't really necessarily been revisited in a number of years. There's a number of challenges that are focusing within the operations. And one of the things that we've seen that's been incredibly effective with our customers is around looking at an operating model and looking at the operating model holistically to see how you can start to transform your operations to meet some of those challenges. And we're going to spend some time in the rest of our presentation really diving into what that means and how that process works. But at a high level, just the key tenets is, the first and foremost is just answer the question, what does right look like? Right? Where do we want to be? What does our operations need to look like? And how is information flowing between the different teams that you have within your organization? The technology that everybody's using, when everything is working perfectly and everything is there to the way that we expect, what does that picture look like? How do we define that? And then where are we in that process? We think that there's going to be an increase in the terms for outsourcing. In the past, we've traditionally within the private equity market, it's traditionally been a self-service model. But I think as these asset managers are starting to deal with the increase in demands that they have on them, looking for some of those areas that may not necessarily be value-added tasks. Are there other players in the space that can potentially do it so that your team can start focusing on the key areas that you want them focused on and doing the appropriate analysis instead of doing those repeatable tasks that aren't adding value and aren't helping to drive and answer some of the challenges that we've outlined before. And all of that ties into just making sure that you can increase your team's efficiency, that you're able to do more with less, and do it in a more controlled and eliminate the risk that is associated with those current processes. So, and I think our statement here at the bottom is a very good summary, right? The private equity firms want to bring greater operational efficiency to their portfolio companies. It's taking that same approach and applying it to yourself and applying it to your own operations is going to be a key thing that we're going to look for that the private equity managers are going to look for in the coming years. So we've really touched on and introduced the operating model. I'll now hand it off to Jason Baldesser, who will talk us through really what that means.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate that. So I think when we think about the challenges and where we're at from a market perspective, as Jason just walked us through, let's take a few minutes here and get into a little bit more specifics around what we mean when we say the private equity operating model. Certainly an operating model, it's a term that can mean several different things depending on where you sit within your organization. And for purposes of today's presentation, we like to think about the PE operating model across three components, and those are outlined on this slide. The first component being, what does right look like for my organization from an accounting implementation perspective, and that's really accounting best practices. And we think about that across four different areas, and we'll get into these in a little bit more here in a second, but this is really, things like reference data, core accounting setup, reporting, automations, the real heart of your operations from an accounting perspective. This is where, if you're in operations, obviously this is what you're dealing with on a daily basis, whether you're managing teams or, you're responsible for supporting the operations from a back or middle office perspective. This is really the nuts and bolts of an accounting operations, and this is the first component when we say PE operating model that you need to look at and you need to optimize. The second component is around your PE technology architecture, and this is really answering the question, how should my technology architecture support my business? We see a lot of organizations that have small IT shops, and we see a lot that have very large IT shops. And, one of the common challenges and things we see across all of them is that their technology architectures aren't necessarily optimized to support their business from a private equity perspective. And, typically this falls within the area of having one or more applications that do the same thing. And you really want to get to a standardization there, and we'll talk about that a little bit further. But this is, do I have the right technology in place to support my business? Am I using the same or similar tools across different processes and functions? And what should my portfolio look like from an optimized perspective or a best practice perspective? And maybe even more importantly, how do I get there? I think in a lot of cases, our clients understand that they have multiple applications performing similar functions, or they may be lacking a key application and doing something offline. That's usually not the surprise, but the real challenge is identifying how you get from where you are today to where you want to be from a technology perspective. The last bucket is what we call lean organization, and this is really a grouping of a lot of different things that don't fit into the first two buckets, and sometimes this stuff gets overlooked, but often it can be the most important to really ensuring that you're set up for success in the long haul. And this is, really ensuring that your organization, your operations is lean and built for ongoing success. So if I have the correct accounting best practices in place, based on my fund types or my structure or where I want to be from a business perspective, if I've taken care of that and I've got the right technology in place to help me deliver those processes, this last item is really, do I have the right people? Do I have the right internal processes around training and metrics and operations management set up? Are my functional teams doing the right work? This is really all of the things that help that machine go on a daily basis and keep you, one step ahead of your competition. So this is, taking a step back, these three components, this is really what we think about when we say, the operating model. So as you can see, it's not just process, it's not just technology, it's not just the softer aspect of your organization, it's really all three together. We certainly helped a lot of clients over the years, around solutions in any one of these given areas. But what we're really trying to do is stress the importance of taking a look at everything from a holistic nature, because that's really where you're going to see the biggest benefits. Now let's take a minute here and talk about standardization. As we think about our service delivery model or your service delivery model and what you do on a daily basis, one of the most common things that we see when we go in and we talk to our clients about their operating model is a lack of standardization. Most of, if not all of our clients at one point or another look something like that graphic that's on the left-hand side of this slide. You may have multiple funds, and those, you grew quickly over time, and those funds were stood up, and your operations, your processes, your PE value chain to support those funds, you didn't give a whole lot of thought, or clients didn't give a whole lot of thought to standardizing that as they stood up. There was a rush to get things going, and so what happens? We typically end up in a situation where we have in this case 3 different fund types, and we've got different ways of doing the same processes across those 3 fund types. I think if you're a small client, or you're a small GP, or you're a small service provider, it's not good to be in this model, but you can probably sustain it for a little bit longer. As you start to get bigger, as you start to grow, as you start to need to scale, it becomes really challenging to succeed or achieve your objectives. If you're in a model where you're lacking standardization across the way you do things. This is not just a process thing. It's not just how the work is done, but maybe who is doing it as well. So it's not optimal from an efficiency and scale perspective. Also introduces a lot of risk into your environment. Sometimes these things can even cause client service issues where if you're large and you're servicing multiple LPs, they can see the differences in reports or processes or the way if they're talking to someone that's on one team versus another. So it creates a lot of challenges, and it's really something that you want to move away from. Obviously, in a perfect state, we're looking at something like what's on the right-hand side of this slide, where we've standardized our key processes across our fund types. We're leveraging similar types of processes or functions or resources or technology across those key PE value chain processes. It doesn't mean that you can't customize. I don't think that's what we're saying here. We certainly know in this business that there's going to be a need for customization, whether it be client requirements or fund specifics or geographical constraints that require you to customize. There's no doubt there's going to be some form of customization. I think what you really want to do is you want to take a step back and look at what you're doing and say, all right, let's standardize where we can, realizing that there's still going to be some customization here and there. You're never going to get away from that, but you certainly don't want to be in a model where your processes and who's doing the work or how you're doing it are totally different across your fund types. Now we're going to talk a little bit about why it's so important to address these operating model pieces. Jason alluded to this in talking about where the market's going and what we're seeing and the challenges. Now that you have an appreciation for what we mean when we say PE operating model, let's talk a little bit about the benefits associated with addressing these things. Certainly, we like to think about the benefits of doing this from a holistic perspective across 3 main areas. The first being cost reduction or efficiency, the second being risk reduction, and the third being enhanced client satisfaction. We've chosen to focus today on the cost reduction piece just because the results that we're seeing and working with our clients are so powerful. So I'm going to turn it over to Jason to talk about the first 2 items here and the things that we're seeing by what you can achieve from a cost reduction or efficiency perspective by addressing accounting best practices and your PE technology architecture.
Thanks, Jason. And as he had mentioned, the key, one of the big areas and one of the biggest things where in talking with our clients, where we've been able to see some of the biggest benefits has really been around just making sure that accounting best practices are implemented on the technology that you have, and really taking a view to figure out how you can best streamline the reference data collection, streamline your core accounting processes. That's some of the areas that we've seen has really shown some of the biggest benefit here. Certainly with the regulations, as we talked about earlier, when those came out, a lot of the information that they were asking for in those regulations were definitely data points that people were tracking to, but there was a new variation and a new way that they were asking for to try and classify that information. So whether it was Form PF looking to classify all the different investor types that you have, that may not have necessarily relied on a single within a single platform where you're tracking a lot of your accounting information. Or in AIF&D where they're asking a lot of similar questions to Form PF, but then not necessarily with the same classifications and the same data points. All of those different reporting needs and those different regulations that you've got to comply with are now having the constraint on our clients in terms of making sure that they can turn that information out. What a lot of times ends up happening is you have a system in place, but then some of this other information, these other data points, start residing in their own environments. And now the way that your technology stack looks is that you've got your your products that are out there, your accounting products that are out there, but then you also have these other, effectively these completely separate and siloed data warehouses that are living in Excel that are tracking all of these key data points. So certainly one of the first things that we've been talking to our clients and different customers with is taking a look at some of those best practices, right? Where does this information sit? How do we need to collect it? What's the process for going through and review it and make sure that it's finished and it's timely and it's completed in a timely manner, so that when we need to do and generate our reports, we can do that effectively. And then the other part is that once I have all that information, that then becomes the launching point that I can start to look to a lot of the automations and the dynamic reporting needs that I have. Because if I'm focused on executing repeatable processes where I have all of my inputs clearly defined and input into an organized fashion, then I can start to then build those automations on the back end of that and start to really have some significant time savings through that process. But just getting over that first hurdle often becomes a challenge there. So that's really where we see our benefits from an accounting and best practice standpoint. The next area really then comes into the PAE technology architecture. For us, really where this area is, it's a matter of just consolidating, rationalizing, and figuring out what's the right size application based on your business model and your client needs. I think there was a big trend, in the past of, we need systems to just handle certain challenges, and I think a lot of asset managers just went out and started to figure, just go out and try and solve all these problems with either technology solutions that they bought off the shelf or building out their own. And what I think a lot of firms are starting to recognize is that the cost of ownership, especially for technologies that have been self-built, the cost of ownership for those applications just continue to increase. And as the technology starts to get, more and more stale, as the teams that help build that technology start to move on and go other places, the risk that gets associated with having a lot of those custom platforms and custom solutions starts to increase, and clients when they start to take a step back and think, does this fit within the profile of the firm that we want to have? Do you have so many custom applications that you start to question if you're an asset manager or a software company? I think those are the things that firms are starting to look at, and clients are starting to see that there's really opportunities to start to consolidate that platform and that view, and start to get some benefit there. The other area is, if there are those other solutions that we talked about, these other applications that are out there that are supporting different needs, there's a reliance that the information that's housed within those systems is consistent. So building out that integration and making sure that you've got a single source of truth, and you can rely that these applications that have different responsibility ownerships, whether it's an accounting platform over here or CRM platform over there, or portfolio monitoring system somewhere else, making sure that they're all relying on data that's managed between the different systems, making sure that they're integrated and working cohesively, is something that's critical not just from a risk perspective, but then also from an effort perspective, and how much time people are spending just duplicating the amount of data that exists in those different systems. Those are clearly the areas where we see when looking at the technology architecture. And Jason, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things from a lean organization standpoint?
Sure. Thanks, Jason. So as I mentioned when I was introducing the components of the operating model, this is really a bucket that contains a lot of different things. And from an opportunity perspective, as we illustrate here in the graph, it's not the biggest, right? It's not going to deliver the same amount of savings that optimizing your accounting best practices or your technology architecture is going to deliver. But in a lot of cases, the things that we see here and the fix for these items is really the easiest. So these, often fall into the bucket of quick wins. I'll touch on a couple specific examples here that seem to be prevalent across all the clients that we're working with right now in this area. And the first one is training. Again, this sometimes is a factor based on how big or small you are, but we really see a lot of challenges with training, and oftentimes training is an afterthought. It's someone new comes on or a new fund is launched and you have new people working on it, and the way that people are trained is by having them sit with people that have been either working on that fund or senior accountants within operations, and that certainly it works, but it's not a long-term recipe for success. And again, as we talk about scalability and efficiency and growth and dealing with the challenges that are in the marketplace today, we really work with our clients to stress the importance of putting a formal training process in place. As folks on the phone here might know, if you have that model in place where you have people shadowing and sitting with people, that just it introduces too much risk and too much lack of standardization in the way people are trained, and that permeates throughout the organization. So it's definitely something that we've spent a lot of time working with people to address. You can see an immediate benefit when you put a formal training program in place. Another area that falls within this is lack of adhering to a plan from a functional team perspective. We've worked with a lot of clients to help them put functional teams in place or stand-up teams, middle offices, or investor services teams, or reference data entry teams into their accounting operations. And we've also worked with clients that have had those in place, and we've gone in to work with them. And what we see in a lot of cases is, you put something like that in place, but you don't really move to that model. You don't jump all in. There's still bits and pieces of work being performed in the back office that should have been moved to the middle office, or bits and pieces of investor services work being performed by a fund accountant when you have an investor services team that was set up to do that type of work. Again, in the individual cases, these aren't really big deals, but when you look at them holistically across an organization, it's something that can be fixed relatively easily, and it's holding you back from really achieving the benefits that you sought out to get when you went to a functionalized model or you went to create teams to do certain pieces of work throughout the day. So it's something, again, that we see quite a bit as we work with clients. The third example is use of metrics and key performance indicators to measure your operations. So I'm not talking about the different pieces of data that you provide to your clients in terms of return and the other metrics that they look at to measure their investments. I'm talking about how do you measure the success of your operations? How efficient are you? Are you performing, are you delivering quality service to your client? Are you achieving the scale and agility that you're really looking to get? And there's lots of data out there that you can use in terms of what you produce on a monthly basis and what you provide to your clients that you can measure yourself against. And, we see a lot of firms that just absolutely don't do this at all, or they've tried and got overwhelmed. And it's really something that, you should have in place if you want to consider yourself a best-in-class operations. It doesn't need to be overly complex. I think that's people really struggle with trying to put something more onerous in place than they really need to. So taking a step back and looking at, what do I want to be measuring myself on from an operations perspective? More than likely you have that data in place. It's just a matter of getting it and using it to help, adjust as needed on a month-to-month or quarter-to-quarter basis, so you're staying ahead of any problems from an operations perspective. So now I'm going to jump into talk a little bit about the approach for achieving all of these benefits that we just spent a couple minutes talking about. We've chosen to focus today on a three-phased approach that we would recommend to implementing the transformation, or getting to the point of implementing the transformation. Certainly, we could spend a lot of time talking about how we've helped clients and how we've seen clients implement a lot of the things we're talking about today, but we've chosen to focus on getting up to that point of implementation quite frankly, because it's the most important aspect. If you don't set yourself up to identify what the right opportunities are, what they're going to deliver to your business, how they align with your business model and where you're going as an organization, and putting the plans in place to actually deliver those, then quite frankly, you're going to have challenges with the implementation. So this is where, when we have conversations with our clients, and whether we're helping them or they've been through a process like this on their own, this is really where we spend most of the time talking, because this is really where you need to do the most important work. So if we think about this from a three-phase perspective, the first phase is really the current state component, right? This is gathering data and constructing a detailed view of what's happening within your operations today. And the ultimate output of this phase is building that what does right look like for your organization. So, based on what you're doing today, from a best practices perspective across those three areas that we talked about, from accounting best practices, your technology architecture, and your lean organization, what are you doing today in those three areas, and where do you need to get to, where do you want to get to? And that really, we collect data, we understand what's happening today, and this is really important to, it's not just, we're not talking about just process mapping here, or it's a combination of really understanding the processes and what's happening, and talking to people within your organization and really seeing the operations on a first-hand basis, observations, shadowing, that kind of stuff, because you really have to see how this all fits together. As you guys know, private equity operations is complex. There are a lot of differences depending on fund types and client-specific requirements. So we really need to have a holistic view of what's happening today from a current state perspective. So then, as we move into the second phase, which is identifying and analyzing gaps, we can have that full understanding. So as we move into that phase, this is, identifying and analyzing gaps. This is taking what is happening today and starting to understand that, based on where you want to get to from a business model perspective, and what a best practice for your organization is, how far away are you across those areas? How much room how much room is there for standardization in your accounting model and your operations? Where do you fall short in the usage of reporting or reference data or automations around your accounting platform? Where do you have redundancy from your technology architecture? Where are there areas for improvement within your functional teams, or your training, or your use of metrics? So this is building that picture, and it's not just identifying the gaps, but it's really starting to build those solutions to close the gaps. Again, as I mentioned earlier, in a lot of cases, some of these gaps are known, and the challenge is being able to get away from the day-to-day work to actually put solutions in place to close them. So it's the combination of the two that really comes together within this second phase, is identifying those gaps, identifying the size of those gaps, and starting to put solutions in place for closing those gaps. The third phase is where this all comes together, and recommendations and plans are formalized. One of the things that we think is really important in this day and age is quantification. So, as we work with our clients to execute a process like this, we're collecting data that really helps put you in a position to make smart decisions about where you want to take your operating model. There's more than likely going to be more things that come out of an approach like this than you're going to be able to take on. So there needs to be some prioritization. You need to have an understanding of what are the trade-offs, what's the cost-benefit of implementing things to get me to a best practice model for my operations, because you're not going to do everything. There are going to be things that just don't make sense to do either right now or later. So there's going to be a phased approach to putting all this together. So really want to arm our clients with a full understanding of what the gaps are, what the solutions are to close those gaps, and what the cost benefit of doing that is. So you can put a phased implementation plan in place. One of the other areas I'll mention here that we find really important is not turning an approach like this into a theoretical or PowerPoint exercise. It's really hard to implement solutions that are just bullets on a PowerPoint slide. So as we work with our clients to go through processes like this, we really take we've modified our approach, and we work really hard to work with our clients to actually build out the solutions. So there's tangible plans in place to hit the ground running when decisions are made about how we want to implement these things. It may seem like a small nuance, but we've also had to seen a lot of clients that have struggled to implement, and one of the root causes for those struggles were not enough data and not enough real understanding of what the solutions were that they needed to put in place, because they had gone through a process like this previously and not executed in what we would consider to be a best practice manner. So that, if you go through a process like this and work towards a data-driven, collaborative approach that provides the details that are needed, you're going to be set up for success in your implementation. Obviously, we know there's lots of challenges with implementing solutions to transform your operating model, but it's really critical that you're set up for that success by going through a process as we've outlined here. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jason to talk a little bit more specifically about some relevant examples and what your organization should look like, what your target state operating model should look like if you go through a process as we just outlined.
Thanks, Jason. And I think we've spent a lot of time talking about why the need for an operating model, the process for it, but just to try and paint a very clear picture in terms of when all is said and done, where do we want to be, and what are the areas that we really want to focus on? And I think that there are three key themes that we've kept touching on as we talked about the operating model and how we like to think about it, and what are the opportunities that we start to look at. The first being the people, right? Making sure that the resources that you have in place, and you're putting those people in a position for them to be successful. So whether it's making sure that they're focused on working on their value-added processes, or that they've trained to use all the tools that they have at their disposal to the best of their ability. But you want to make sure that your people are in a position so that they can grow along with your business, right? So as you have increased needs, you know that you can start to ask for the teams to start taking on more because they're getting better at the things that they're doing today, and they're able to take on some of those additional challenges that they have. The next area that we look at would be from a process perspective, right? Making sure that the people gains that we're, and making sure that the benefits that you have from the people perspective, that you've got the processes in place to complement those teams' strengths. So whether it's a matter of simplifying the sharing of information between the teams, or building consistency across all the different teams that you have in place, so that if you add a new strategy to your fund, that you can your team that's managing the buyout investments can handle your real estate investments as well. The types of reporting and processing that you have in place, all of that is going to be having consistency allows for you to get additional scale out of your team. Right? And finally is making sure the last piece would be to make sure that we've got the technology in place to support all of this, right? Because with the best resources and a very clear process, if they're spending their time executing manual work that's on a consistent basis, that's going to end up just taking up significant amounts of time on their own that isn't value added and is going to ultimately present challenges. So making sure that you've got the right technology and that you've got all the different components in place, and that you've got the systems are integrated and working well with one another, that the teams all have easy to use applications that they understand. Making sure that is in place and that piece of the puzzle is there is very important. And clearly, I think from our experiences and being in this space and having an understanding of private equity operations through our 15 some odd years of supporting them, we've got a view on how we can focus and how we can support all of those different areas, and we're happy to talk them through with you. So if I were to summarize here, from some of the key benefits and some of the key things that we've seen coming out of some of these from these operating models, from a people perspective, it's looking at the training plans that you have in place, looking at are there opportunities from a managed services perspective where you're not where you're taking out some of those repeatable tasks that aren't adding value. Those have clearly been some areas from a people perspective where we've seen some benefit and some gains. From a process standpoint, where specifically the things that we've seen is looking at your system controls, looking at the security that you have in place, aligning of tasks across the teams. That comes from a process perspective, right? Having that defined, understanding where those handoffs are, understanding how the information needs, the flow of information within the organization, and who supports what, making sure that focusing on that is what we've done from a process perspective. And then from a technology, certainly from an automation standpoint, from building interfaces between the different systems that are out there that support the day-to-day operations, those have been some of the key opportunities and key things that have come out from a technology perspective. But as we said, there are areas in across all three that we tend to see. Certainly each client's going to be different, and each customer that we work with is different in terms of which areas do they feel that they're really strong with, which areas do they need more support with. But if you focus on those key terms, on the people, the processes, and the technology, we're going to be able to get to a very good target operating model that's going to support your business and grow alongside of you, right? So that concludes our presentation for today. We hope that you found it really helpful. We now want to open the floor for some questions.
At this time, we would like to take any questions you might have for us today. To ask a question via the web, click the green Q&A button in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Type a question in the open area and click Ask to submit.
It's a familiar one. Will this recording be available after the event? And the answer is, of course. After the event, we'll provide everyone who registered with a link to the recording. There are a couple other questions coming in. Jason Hath, do you want to take the next one?
Sure. So we have a question here. Which types of firms get the most benefit out of this type of process? Jason B., do you want to answer that?
Sure, I'll start, and certainly feel free to jump in. The easiest answer for a question like this is that we really believe, obviously, very strongly in the approach that we outlined today. So really, any size firm that resonates with the challenges that we discussed and the benefits that we talked about going through a process like that would benefit. So there really isn't a size. We get lots of questions about, am I too small, or what size do you have to be to really benefit from something like this? And the simple answer is, going through a structured process to address challenges within your operating model is going to benefit you, regardless of the size of your firm, whether you're multinational and hundreds of people in your operations, or whether you're a small firm with 10 people in your back office and one or two funds. You're going to benefit from going through a structured process to look at this stuff. Usually what we see is there's a compelling event or two or three that really drive firms to undertake a process like this, and that can be a combination of several things, like a large upgrade of their accounting platform combined with some internal cost reduction pressures, or the launching of a new fund with some internal restructuring to stand up a middle office at the same time. It's when you get in those compelling events that really say, okay, we're going through some change. We have a need to really get more efficient, reduce our risk, improve our client service. Let's take a step back and look at everything to make sure we're not missing anything, and really do this in one in one shot.
Yeah, and just to echo that, I think certainly looking, one of the key benefits is it's clearly about maintaining, but it's also about growth, right? Where do you want to be next, and what are the next things that you want to be able to do, and the services that you want to offer? I think that's something that's really important when you're looking at, does this apply to me? That's something that I think you'd want to take a hard look at. A lot of times that's where when we've spoken to firms, that's the area that firms are coming to us on. We've had operations for some time. We want to significantly grow the business, or we see this as an area. Or how do we get there? What are the things that we need to scale up on? that's definitely an area that I would think would be a key indicator here. And the other area would be it's just looking at the different teams you have, and if most firms have an area where you've got your investor relations team, you've got your accounting team, you've got your middle office function, you've got your deal professionals, and they're all relying on the same type of information being shared efficiently. Making sure that that's a well-run machine, that's really the only precursor that we see is to having this be a successful process. And I think that's, so to echo Jason's point, I think it's anybody would benefit from this type of exercise. Certainly the scale and the duration of time that it would take to complete something like that would obviously change depending on the number of people involved. But we've seen this be beneficial to large administrators with hundreds of people in the team, to small direct funds that have that only have a handful of people on there.
Right. There's one other question here that's related to this, which is we're hosted. How does this change the impact? That doesn't change it. Is this still valuable?
Yeah, and I think that definitely is something that I think that's the first step that the things that when you're looking at is value-added tasks, hosting and the value-added expense on from a hosting experience, from having people to administer the application. Those are the types of things that we've started to see that people are taking a look at, and would you've already taken that step to analyzing your operating model and looking to see if this is are the people working on efficiently, but there's still a lot more areas that we can take a look at. And I think that's something that we touched on previously, right? Your capital call process, right? There, you still have to do a capital call. You're still relying on that process to be generated. That would be something that we would want to take a look at.
Jason B.
Yes, we have another question that came in. What type of repeated tasks that don't add value do you see often being transitioned to managed services? Jason, I think this is one that you can kind of build on what you were just saying there as far as some of the processes that we've seen when we go through the accounting component of the operating model and the what does right look like piece. Do you want to share your thoughts there? Sure.
So I think first and foremost, that one of the first things being the application administration. It's not just about the rack space and the hosting. It's more on I've got to maintain this application. I've got to run hot fixes. I've got to have those processes that are done. Add users. All of those functions that are repeatable but aren't adding a ton of value add. Those have been areas where we've seen clients look to explore from a managed services perspective. Other areas, when we talk with our limited partners, around some of the data collection that they have to do, that's been something that we've seen a lot of interest in. Your limited partners are investing in tens of managers to hundreds of managers in some cases, where you've got to then collect all that information. You've got capital calls that are coming in. You've got schedules of investments that you want to quantify and be able to consume that information. That's clearly been an area that clients have looked to from a managed services perspective.
Yeah, and another area, you think about repeatable tasks that are overhead or a drain on people who have other day jobs. Regulatory reporting is an area where people are also raising this question. It's like everybody has to do the same thing in the same way, but it's not what's adding key value to the firm. So those are the kinds of areas that also come up, particularly as the regulations accumulate and the cycles of reporting overlap. Then it becomes more and more of a drain. People think, okay, how can I offload this? Looking for any other questions? think that probably covers. The other ones I'm seeing are pretty much overlapping with what we've already covered. So with that, let's talk about what's next in this series. As we mentioned before, this is a 3-part webinar series. We'll continue into next week on June 24th and June 26th. On the 24th, we're going to be talking about how to get the maximum business impact from all the data that's flowing through your firm for operations, for management decision-making, and, of course, for the regulatory reporting uses that we've just been talking about. And then on the 26th, we'll be exploring what managed services might mean in the context of private equity. It's interesting that just came up as a question. And how to evaluate what might make sense for you in the context of your own business. So we look forward to having you on both of those. And in closing, we'd like to thank you again for joining us and participating in the discussion today. If we did not get to your questions, we will be sure to follow up with you directly after the event. Feel free to contact us by the email shown on this screen to learn more about this topic and how SunGard can help you. Thank you, and goodbye for now.
Thank you again for joining us today. This does conclude today's web conference, and you may now disconnect. Have a great day.